Welcome back to the Coop Files. This is part 2 of Adolescence and Consciousness, and where we are asking the question, why do most adults never wake up? Just to very briefly recap part 1, where we're looking at what do we actually mean by consciousness, what do we mean by wake up rather, and the levels of consciousness, the different stages in the raising of consciousness. And we've had a bit of a deep dive into what adolescence is, how important it is, what's going on inside the brain, and what a healthy exit from adolescence should look like. So again, we've covered, just to recap each section. So consciousness, we've looked at how our thoughts, emotions and behaviours or actions determine our level of consciousness. They're the three elements, the Trinity. We've looked at the part of the brain, what's actually happening in the brain during adolescence. The prefrontal cortex is developing. We've looked at childish versus mature thinking, the inner conflict which goes on during adolescence, what the improvements in cognitive ability look like, the difference between hypothetical and abstract thinking, metacognition, relativistic thinking, questioning authority in all domains, self-concept, the sense of identity and self-esteem or self-worth, autonomy, how belief systems are being developed, and the importance of adolescence in some cultures as it's considered a rite of passage or an initiation. We've looked at the abandonment of the true self if a child is not equipped to go through adolescence. If they don't have the tools, or the parents don't have the tools to assist, and the consequences of ego-driven development. We've looked at the path to true maturity, and we've concluded with the fact that those who complete the inner initiation become guides for others, helping awaken humanity from its collective adolescence. And it's not even a difficult concept to wrap your head around, is it? If somebody's gone through adolescence and they come out the other end as a fully functioning, healthy, balanced adult, they become the guide for their children. But unfortunately, we find ourselves in a situation where those of us who do actually have maturity, emotionally and spiritually, then we are becoming guides, unfortunately, for children trapped in adults' bodies. And I'm pretty sure, if you've taken the time to watch part 1, I'm pretty sure that you can, if you're honest with yourself, you can see these behaviours everywhere. Childish behaviours. We've also spoke about the fact that somebody can have significant development of the logic side of the brain, the left side, the masculine energy, the controlling force. They could be super intellectuals, but they have zero emotional intelligence, zero connection to spirit, and they're not capable of this higher level of thinking, and they've got no true sense of self. They are pure ego. So we'll press on with part two. Part two, we're going to look at trauma, what it is, how it affects somebody, particularly a child, and how this might certainly contribute to the the arrested development of adolescence, of that phase, where some children quite simply may not go through the initiation as they should, and they may remain in an eternal infantile state. So trauma, a lot of people will associate this with a physical wound. It comes from Latin, a wound, a hurt, a defeat. To rub, turn, with derivatives referring to twisting, piercing, etc. Originally an abnormal condition of the body produced by external violence, as opposed to one caused by poison, infection, bad habits, etc. The sense in psychology of a psychic wound, unpleasant experience which causes abnormal stress. Thorns in the spirit, so to speak. The role of early trauma in the fragmentation of the self. When a child experiences trauma, whether through neglect, abuse, or emotional invalidation, the psyche cannot integrate the experience. The child's nervous system and sense of self are not yet strong enough to process deep pain or betrayal. And just to be clear, and I'm sure anybody listening to this absolutely gets what is meant by the words neglect and abuse. This is neglecting somebody's emotional needs. We have physical needs and we have emotional needs. And abuse, it can be subtle. Neglect is a form of abuse, and abuse can be subtle. It can just be how you talk to your child. You're not catering for their needs, and you see them as let's try and get my words out. I think I've said this before. Parents see their kids as an extension of them, and they're using them really to inflate their own ego, and that's abuse. In order to survive, the psyche does something extraordinary. It splits. Part of the self, the true feeling authentic self, is pushed deep into the unconscious. The child hides this aspect because expressing it is dangerous or met with rejection. So their authentic self, who they truly are, the thinking, feeling self, the authentic self, the one that's connected, is abandoned. In other words, pushed deep into the unconscious. It's abandoned, and and that abandonment obviously is going to cause psychological trauma, because the child believes they're not worthy, and that's quite simply all that's going on. They feel that they're not worthy, so they need to be somebody else, so they bury their true self. Can't be that person, can't be him or her. That's I'm ashamed of that person. To function in the external world, the child develops a false self, a mask or persona adapted to the demands of the environment. This false self becomes the ego identity, compliant, defensive, performative, or controlling, depending on the environment. So it abandons its true self, its awareness of who it is. That gets abandoned, and it grafts on to a construct of the mind, because the true self is consciousness, and the ego identity, the ego is a construct of the mind. It's not you, it's a tool. It forms part of your identity. Like a lot of things, there's a balance. There's the ego identity and the real identity, and you can't let the ego identity rule the roost, because it's not really you. It's there for the physical world, if you like. The real you is the consciousness, the unseen. So the ego identity, so the graft onto that, well, that must be me then. And then the ego is compliant, it follows orders to be safe. Defensive, because it always has to be right. Performative or controlling. We've spoken about control and how that manifests from the left-brained imbalance, which works in perfect harmony with the R complex, and that creates the ego identity. And this is all this is pure selfishness. All of these behaviors, they all stem from selfishness, because the ego is selfish. It will always look after number one. And as I said, this depends on the environment. So it'll depend on the environment, and obviously a big part of that will be the parents. So the compliant or a conformist can come out of this type of trauma. This means the ego develops as a defense, not as an authentic expression of being. So the ego will be, for a controlling parent, the ego will be in the child, the ego identity will be anything the parent wants it to be, because it gets rewards. It's compliant, and the child will develop a very compliant attitude towards the parent, and this is not a coincidence, because the parent who's created the trauma or caused the trauma will more than likely be a controller. So what does a controller want? They want a compliant child who can just be an extension of themselves. And this is not a coincidence. This is a natural phenomena, or a natural law. The controlling parent, they instinctively know how to create a compliant child, but it all just kind of happens naturally. That's what happens inside of that already imbalanced parent. They cannot create a fully authentic adult through bringing them up and seeing them through adolescence. They want to control, so they'll create the environment that causes this. It's not a coincidence. If you recognize these types of behaviors in somebody, compliant, defensive, controlling, egotistical, just look at the parents. You'll see the dynamic play out. just look at the parents. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And this is why this is, to me, so important, because this is the chain we have to break. Shame and guilt as psychological locks. Shame and guilt are powerful psychic inhibitors. Shame says there is something wrong with me. Guilt says I have done something wrong. When a child internalizes shame, especially from chronic invalidation or abuse, it begins to identify with the wound itself. Instead of recognizing that something bad happened to them, they believe they are bad. This belief makes it terrifying to reconnect with the true self, because the true self becomes associated with pain, rejection, or unworthiness. So the psyche builds stronger defenses: denial, repression, intellectualization, perfectionism, etc. In effect, shame and guilt lock the true self away. That's the key. That's the padlock and the key. And I would suggest in most cases that key has long since been thrown away. They don't even know there is a key. And again, in my own family, I can see how this is played out with, obviously when I say my own family, I'm never talking about the trinity in this home. I'm talking about the wider family. I can see I've been in this family, in my married family, from for 33 years, ironically 33, for 33 years, and I can see this. For 33 years, that's a long time to observe, contemplate, study, research, join the dots, see the connections, and then watch your theory continue to play out in the future. Once you know what's going on, you can make predictions. And I really do feel sorry for the people who have been affected by this abuse. Just making sure that there's nothing else I want to say on that. Just shame and guilt. Remember that, and a child that's so innocent and fragile, and the little brains are not ready to cope, obviously, with the type of subtle abuse or neglect and hurtful things that can be said to a child. You don't wrap them up in cotton wool. You don't spoil them, obviously, but you've got to make sure that they develop self-esteem, self-worth. This isn't even rocket science, but I'm probably going to say this every single time I speak. The Child Trauma Centre down the road, that's all I hear is trauma, 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 trauma. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. You're driving a £70,000 car. I'm pretty sure there's some subtle changes to your lifestyle, you could afford to work less and raise your child more, rather than handing them off to a stranger. I really, and this is all by design. This is all by design. Two parents have to work, free childcare off the government, all the rest of it. It's all. This is going to, in my mind, this is going to get worse. Absolutely worse. I mean, what message? Talk about shame and guilt. What message are you sending to the child when you abandon them every single day, day in, day out, day in, day out? What message? And this is the thing with mothers as well. Women are meant to have more intuition, more of a bond with their child, and be more protective. And they just abandon them every day, and they don't care. It doesn't have any effect when the child's screaming when the mother's leaving them at the door, and they can just bury it. The mother, and no, I've got to go to work, and I need to pay for my Range Rover. It's and then I'm being judgmental, but I'm allowed to be judgmental. This is important. And then they get home, stick them in front of the television, and then the message is, when they get a bit older, the message is, shh, I'm watching the telly. So now the television becomes more important than the young child. Attention. That's what the child needs. Attention. Not spoiling. Attention. Spend time with them. Listen to them. Validate them. Always drop what you're doing when they need attention. And that might just be to tell you something, even if it's trivial. Anyway, this isn't meant to be a lecture on how to parent. It's obviously easy to go off on one because I feel this. The ego becomes the substitute identity because the authentic core is suppressed consciousness. The ego steps in as the organized center of the personality. It's not evil, it's an emergency coping mechanism, but it's rigid and limited. The ego's primary concern is survival, not truth, not growth, not love. It learns strategies, how to please, how to control, how to avoid pain. But, and this is the key point, the ego cannot grow in the same way the true self can, consciousness. The ego is a construct. It can adapt, but it cannot transform. Only the true self evolves. So when adolescence arrives, the natural time of psychic expansion and individuation, the ego resists. The ego fears change because change threatens its control. The adolescent's awakening potential, curiosity, rebellion, idealism, all trigger the ego's defenses. That is why some people remain stuck psychologically. Adolescence is never truly completed because the ego self cannot undergo the initiation that the true self was meant to experience. And that, in a nutshell, is what is going on. healing the late initiation. Healing is, in essence, the resumption of interrupted development or arrested development. It means going back to reclaim the lost parts of the self, the inner child, the creative spontaneity, the capacity to feel and love freely, and integrate them consciously. Integration. It's another key aspect of consciousness, integrating your thoughts, emotions, and actions. This is the true work of initiation in adulthood. Facing the pain that once could not be faced, the ego couldn't face it. Releasing the shame that locked the heart away. Allowing the authentic self to return to awareness. And this makes perfect sense. This is the pain that could not be faced. The ego was too scared, because probably on another level, the ego did not want to give up its newfound throne. The shame that locked the heart away. These people seem heartless. They lack a certain warmth. And then the authentic self can be allowed to come back in. The door only needs to be opened ajar. I would suggest as soon as you even think about this, you're already on the journey. Because the ego has that door, as I say, firmly bolted, padlocked, and in some senses the key has been tossed into the sea. In this sense, therapy, shadow work, and spiritual awakening are all modern forms of belated initiation. They help the ego surrender its dominance and allow the true self to re-emerge and take its rightful place as the center of consciousness, the seat of consciousness. The neocortex can come back online if the R complex surrenders, or the ego. Trauma causes the child to abandon the true self out of necessity. Shame and guilt lock the true self away. The ego arises as a survival mechanism, but it cannot grow. It can only defend. True maturity begins when the ego's defenses are gently dismantled and the authentic self is reintegrated into consciousness. A metaphor could be the ego is the cocoon, the true self is the butterfly. If the cocoon never opens, the metamorphosis never happens. And that, to me, describes very well what we see playing out on the movie screen, which is reality. Children, they're not even adolescents because they haven't been through it. I don't believe, based on this little bit of research and observations, my own experiences, I don't believe these people, I don't believe a lot of people have actually gone through the initiation, the journey, the in-between, the in-betweeners, adolescence, transition from child to fully functioning adult. And that, in a nutshell, is why most adults never wake up, because they don't have the tools. The first thing you need to have is the tools. The tools. The second thing you need is the knowledge. And the third thing you need is the wisdom. And if you haven't got the tools, you're never gonna get off first base. So, as far as trauma is concerned, we've looked at what it does to the true self, and I just want to now cover a little bit of what it does to consciousness when the true self is completely abandoned. And it's there's two aspects to consciousness. There is the true energy force, which we call love, or self-love even, and that is the force of consciousness which enables us to grow, as we've seen. That's what allows us to develop from a consciousness perspective and evolve as a species. Love, it expands consciousness. It helps us raise our levels of consciousness and improve our thoughts, behaviors, our thoughts, emotions and behaviors. Fear conquers love when the true self is abandoned due to trauma, abuse or neglect. So fear conquers love. What is fear in terms of consciousness? It is just the absence of the energy force of love. If love disappears, the positive energy that helps us create, evolve and better ourselves, if that disappears or weakens, then fear creeps in. The negative energy force, the destructive energy force. But it's not really conquering love. What's happening is love is just being taken out of the house, and all that's left is darkness or negative energy or fear. It's a destructive energy rather than a creative energy. And that's why these people have self-destructive tendencies. And that's why they are obsessed with control, because they are fear-based and they are chaotic inside. They have not integrated their thoughts, emotions and actions. They are confused, internal confusion, chaotic. Nothing's in order in their own house, and therefore they think that the world outside is chaotic. So they need control, external control. It's like they can't regulate themselves inside, so they try to regulate the external world by controlling others. This is the hidden truths within the Bible. It shouldn't be thrown out. The baby shouldn't be thrown out with the bathwater. I think that's the phrase. There are some useful allegories and truths in the Bible. We'll cover that more in later episodes. This is the occult, the hidden meaning of things, the things that you have to look a bit deeper for to get some knowledge or wisdom. Anyway, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. So that fits perfectly with what we're saying about consciousness. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, and fear has to do with punishment. It is, things like self-hatred, self-punishment, external controls. It feels like a punishment to this world that we live in. This control system does feel like a punishment because there's too much fear. Is it better to be loved or feared? I would say those who want to be feared are filled with fear themselves. They sense an insecurity within, an inner dread, perhaps a feeling of worthlessness, and they feel the solution is to command respect, twisted though it may be, which is created by the fear from others. It is out of line to suggest that all the weapons we invent, especially the really powerful ones, demonstrate not how strong we are, but how scared we are. Love, self-love, is the true state of consciousness. Fear is simply the absence or lack of love. Just like darkness is the absence of light energy, or cold is the absence of heat energy, fear is the absence of love energy. Heat always overcomes cold, light always overcomes darkness, and love always overcomes fear. This is the polarity of our reality. If there is enough of the positive, it will always win. But just like lighting a fire or turning on a light, it is the action which ultimately makes a difference, not positive thinking alone. Self-love, higher consciousness, is the same. We need to take action to look inside of ourselves and change our behavior. To go back to the Hawkins scale of consciousness in connection with what we've just been talking about there, you can see this graphic. The scale is divided, top and bottom, and the halfway point is courage, and the bottom part is fear-based, and the top part is love-based. They're the two forces. Love is the energy force which expands, and fear is the energy force which contracts. And it's the word contraction. It's funny that also that's a legal term, isn't it? A contract, when you're restricted, tied down to something which you can't get out of. Suffering in that thing that you signed. Well, this is similar. It's you signed up for it when you abandoned your true self. You made a contract with the devil to go to hell. And the turning point is courage. You need the courage. We spoke about late initiation. It takes courage to look at oneself, realize that they are not who they believe they are, and the courage to walk away from that self and let the true self back in. That takes an awful lot of courage, especially, as an adult who's been in this contract for so long. Difficult contract to get out of. And that concludes part 2. I'll see you in part 3. Thank you.